Here we are, a year removed from the release of Bethesda's big budget, highly anticipated Skyrim in space, Starfield, and how are things doing? Well, I don't know, you can take a look at the numbers and realize that, the game hasn't really, got its second wind yet, but recently we've had the release of its first expansion, okay? It got its first major DLC, and it resulted in, well, you see that little bump right there? Well, a few more people decided to check it out. 21,792. Well, that's about the highest it's been since, release. But don't worry about that. It's not like it hasn't, come back down to normal. But that's fine. That's fine because, maybe people are just waiting for some free time. It's not like the DLC, has been widely panned. Starfield's first expansion, Shattered Space, receives mostly negative reviews on Steam as game sees peak player counts decline by 95%. Yeah, the game's dead. Yeah, do you have any hopes for Elder Scrolls 6? You think a new Fallout game off the heels of the wildly successful Fallout series is going to yield a new installment in the franchise that rivals the halcyon days of New Vegas or 3? No, didn't think so. Remember how this was supposed to be like Xbox's big game of 2023? Now this was going to make all of those and I'm not even like a Sony fanboy or anything like that, right? But this was supposed to make all of those Sony ponies big mad and cry themselves to sleep in their Crash Bandicoot sheets and hug their Aloy pillows just a little bit tighter at night. But in reality, it came out and the most significant thing coming out of Starfield was Az from Heel vs. Babyface's big rant about current deisms and that you're boring! That meme of "you're boring" is more memorable than anything from Starfield, because on top of it just being boring, it was also a buggy disaster. Stop me if you've heard that before. A big AAA release being completely and totally unfinished, but still being sent out into the world, because Bethesda, for a very, very long time, has been under the opinion that we don't really need to finish our games because modders will just go ahead and pick up the slack. But here's the thing. You take a look at the modding community of Starfield, it's non-existent. You take a look at all of your other ancillary markers that just denote the success of a game, they aren't there for Starfield. Nobody's talking about the game. Nobody's memeing the game. Nobody's excited about expansions because they're just attached to a bad game. A broken game, a vapid game, a boring game. Bethesda's first expansion, Shattered Space, for its sci-fi RPG sandbox game, Starfield received mostly negative reviews on Steam as the game's peak player count has declined by 95% in a little over a year since the game has released. Shattered Space released on September 30th, cost $30 on top of the $70 for the base game. Yep, it has not moved at all. Which is kind of wild to think, but I'd imagine that, this winter sale, there's going to be a big old discount on Starfield. You better believe it, especially on Steam. And it's not being well received, even with the so-called positive reviews being negative. Well, yeah, exactly. You take a look at this recommended review, and I'll just let you wonder if it's actually positive. The story is boring AF. Would recommend if you have insomnia and need to work the next day. Yeah. Similarly, a user kills one. That sounds about right. Also gave the game a positive review, but wrote, "It's more Starfield. Neither good nor bad, just meh. Not bad enough to not recommend, but also not good enough at full price. Wait for a sale." He added, make of that what you will. If you enjoyed the base game, you'll enjoy the DLC. If you didn't like the base game, this DLC isn't going to change your mind. It's not some big upgrade to the game like it seemed it was gonna be. It's just kind of there, bro. Okay, Mel Gibson, after 3 beers, wrote something about the people behind the scenes in the industry, and he left a voicemail for his ex-wife about how he hopes that she gets gang raped by a pack of some people. Anyways, Starfield, shout out Mel Gibson, he's great. Starfield and now Shattered Space feels like a game made by a bunch of retired in-place managers doing the bare minimum to meet the requirements, directing a bunch of outsourced labor to create the most mediocre product possible. It's an incredibly lazy game all around. The main thing is, this game and its DLC has done is collectively and severely lowered everyone's expectations for Elder Scrolls 6. Oh yeah, because you remember, like Skyrim, the last game to come from Bethesda that actually had like universal praise, because the follow-up, what is it? didn't Far Cry 4 come, or I'm not Far Cry 4. Like that was about the time frame too, and that was also coming out. But no, Fallout 4 came out after that, and everybody was like, yeah, I kind of prefer 3, and New Vegas is so much better than that. But yet it's fine. And then Elder Scrolls Online, Fallout 76, and then Starfield. Like, shout out Razorfist. I remember watching his review of Skyrim back in the cut when he said Skyrim's not a bad game. The cracks are beginning to form, and you're going to notice in about 2 release times that Bethesda's strategy, Bethesda's architecture is getting weak. It's starting to crack. It's starting to fail, and people are going to be turning on it by then. And what was his prognostication? Oh yeah, by the time Fallout 76 came out, oh yeah, everybody had already turned on their already archaic gameplay loop. No new features, no fixes to the fact that the game is still a boring mess. Not even an attempt to fix the game's core issues, and they release this for $40 instead. What a joke, wrote Galahad. The writing of this game is just awful. Posted STDs in a juice box. That is a great username. This DLC is supposed to take place on the religious zealots' homeland. You'd think the story would be more dark, but every tome something evil is about, but every time I guess something evil is about to go down. The NPCs be like, gee golly, outsider, you don't want to do that. I would not be, I would be, that would be no. Get the hell out of here with the corny ass writing. This is a rated M game. Let's hope Bethesda hire better writers for the next Elder Scrolls game. Yeah, not exactly happening. That's for true. As that Park Place dug a little bit deeper into the Steam chart numbers, well, okay, the game hit a peak concurrent all-time player count of 330,723 players on September 4th, the day after the game released. There was the early access where a lot of people were turned off by it, or if you bought the game a few days earlier, blah, 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 all that crap, you get early access. The last 24 hours, yes, hit 15,862 players, so yeah, that's at the time of their screenshot, a decline of 95.2% of players. And yeah, obviously my numbers are a little bit worse, but that's Sunday, Monday, as opposed to a little bit closer to the release of the expansion. In fact, Shattered Space appears to have hardly had an impact on the peak concurrent player counts since it was released. And yeah, here I am sitting a few days removed from that thinking, oh, maybe there's some people, maybe there's some word of mouth that's out there that could spurn some additional sales. No. Not at all. The game hit a peak concurrent count of 21,792 on September 30th, the day of the release, up 37% from August, when it hit a peak player count of 15,908 for the month. Oof. However, the game was last over 20,000 peak players back in December of 2023. It had fallen to 8,713 players in April. Bro, for a Bethesda game, that's trash. As far as Skyrim, a game that is quickly coming up on its 13th anniversary, remember 11/11/11 when was its release date, and it is still routinely getting over 20,000 players. Here's the thing, man, like, you can turn around a busted game. You can turn around a game that has general negativity. Case in point, No Man's Sky. Now, it doesn't have the numbers. It does not have the numbers of Skyrim at all. But when it was first released, and if you remember back in 2016, oh boy, this thing promised the moon and ended up delivering, well, Starfield. And then it took a long time. It took a big old long time and a bunch of different expansions. And not until Next came out where people checked it out again. And then it ended up getting 97,000 players. Pretty damn good. Half of your audience came back, and every single time after it ended up having a knock-on effect where people would continue to stick around because before the expansion, and before the free update, mind you, 1,400 players, and then after that, you were regularly getting 9, 7, 5,000, and then your next expansion with your next free update, 61,000 people checking it out, and then even people still, 4 years into a game's development coming back and 34,800 people, and just continuing to have good word of mouth, and a game that debuted with overwhelmingly negative reviews has come back to being overwhelmingly positive. And something that's a little bit more relevant to this, and something that, has only been out for the past couple of days, and while the performance is a little bit janky, the Silent Hill 2 remake, I was pretty critical on it. And everything that we were hearing about it, and Blooper Team being Blooper Team, people were skeptical about this, but it's being super successful right now. There's people that are super enjoying this game. So just because you have a lot of bad pre and post launch publicity doesn't mean you can't turn it around. Doesn't mean that the game is DOA. Theoretically, Starfield could come back from the dead. It could come back from 4 digits, not but a year into its release. But in reality, if Bethesda is going to quietly start to give up and redistribute resources from Starfield and try to really make Elder Scrolls 6 into something worthwhile to really reinvigorate Bethesda as a company, I'm going to say that Starfield, the next time people are going to be even noticing the game is when they announce the sequel and try to make everyone forget that that disaster from 2023 is a relic of a long gone past. I'm just not a big Bethesda guy. I don't really like their games. I know that they're wildly popular. They're not for me, but they are for a lot of people, and there's a lot of hope riding on ES6, Fallout 5, and I'm hoping for all of you that those games are good. I'm just saying, and I'm looking over there at Todd Howard, It Just Works Howard, and I see another Peter Molyneux as opposed to anybody who's actually passionate about game development at this point in time. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.